Why don't I just quickly launch in? Looks like we've sort of tapped out with, maxed out with numbers. For those of you who, I think everybody knows me here, but I'm Dave Samet. I'm the principal of DCS Technical and I'm the coordinator of the RACI Mentoring Program, as well as the Careers Development Program. Tonight is supposed to be just an informal discussion among us as mentors, what we can be doing to help our mentees at this time of year, what we could have done as the mentoring program better this year, and what we can improve for next year. Of course, before we start the event, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting all around Australia. We recognise the elders past, present and emerging. What they have, their contributions as Australia's first scientists and engineers, building a healthy and safe community, what they've done and what we can still learn from their ways. And very much we thank the sponsors of the RACI Careers Program, DCS Technical, EnviroLab and Lab Credit Union. Now, this event pretty much arose out of the fact that several mentors contacted me and said, we've got to September, I've had a really good year with my mentee, we've been meeting every month and I'm just not sure what to talk about with them at this point of year. And so I just thought it might be useful for us to have a group discussion about what we have been doing, what's been working for us, and what ideas might be shareable and usable between us. This mentoring program has been running, I think this is year 8 this year. Pam, you might remember better than me. I don't. I think it's year 8 that we've been doing. What I generally find is because most of our mentees are students, not all anymore, and because most of them graduate at the end of the year, then about this time is when most mentees sit up and start thinking, oh, I've got to get a job soon. And so there tends to be a bit of focus on, helping them with good job applications, helping them with last minute networking and that sort of stuff. And of course, also with the perennial question that I get, certainly at the beginning of each year, hopefully not by this stage, but certainly still by this stage, the mentees coming to us and saying, I really don't know what I want to do after I graduate. That's a fairly common question. So I guess I want to start by throwing it open to the floor. What's been working well with your mentees?
Well, I can say for my mentee and I, we can chat for hours. There's no problem. We can just keep on talking. The thing that's been really difficult in this particular situation has been COVID, and I think there's a lot of decisions that have been influenced by that. So, if it wasn't COVID, that would be probably easier, more straightforward. So I think what's worked really well for Bithika is to, be spending the time to write down what she wants and be focused on what she really wants. There's a lot of different factors influencing where she moves ahead. And at this point, we've pretty much come to the decision that maybe she won't work for the short period of time until her youngest gets into school. We're still looking, but it's been a pretty tough one. She's a very a different type of mentee. She's a PhD, she's got 2 children, and she wants to work part-time, specifically as a product development technologist. So there's like all of this criteria. She doesn't drive, or she prefers not to drive. She wants to only have a reasonable amount of time for travel, but also needs to recall for her small child that gets sick quite often. So it's been a really challenging one, but we've come out of it positively in what she wants in her role. And I've set her up with some tools to work through who she could possibly work for. And we've done lots of job applications and phone calls, and got her confident with cold calling people to say, I want to be a product development technologist, and do you have a job, and where is your lab, and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we've got out of that. So I guess I'm looking at the glass half full rather than half empty all the way through the year.
Look, I think Bithika is a really good case study for us to talk about, because
Oh,
Computer froze for a sec. She has been a really engaged, attentive mentee. She's attended events. She's engaged with you as a mentor. She's done the practice applications. I mean, we have 83 mentees in the program. 12 of them submitted practice applications this year. It just blew me away how few of them took advantage of the opportunity. Now, if any of your mentees didn't do the practice application, remember that it's never too late. They can do it any time. We'll always give them feedback, and they don't have to use my dummy example. They can use a real example. So you know, they can say, this is the job I'm applying for. Can you give us some feedback on this application? So you know, just remember, we're always here to help. Now, you've walked a really fine line this year, Kim, between guidance and advocacy. And I think that you've walked that balance really well. You know, you've had a couple of years as a mentor, and I think that you've struck that balance really well. The difference is that there's 3 different ways that we can talk to our mentee. We can talk to them with helping them go through the tools, guidance, right? Going through the tools, learning the tools, making the network, developing the skills, basically self-led, but with us helping to steer it and support them. And that's the ideal form that we aim for in this program. As a next step up, there is advice. And I'm always a bit wary, particularly about offering advice on what they should be doing, because I'm just one person. My viewpoint is not. So when people ask me for advice, I always respond, how about I get you to talk to 4 or 5 people, listen to what they have to say, and then you choose for yourself. That's my approach to that. Keely, you might have something to say about that in a minute. And then the last one is advocacy, where you actually get out and help try and find the mentee a job. And we have discouraged that in the mentoring program. We think that it puts too much burden on the mentor, and we think that it means that the mentee could get a little bit lazy, thinking that the world is just going to be handed to them on the plate. So we've generally worked against that. Now, at the risk of jumping all over the place and at the risk of me talking way too much, one of the things that we are considering for the 2022 program is a very, very limited pilot program of an advocacy program for disadvantaged mentees. That would be particularly refugees, LGBTQI, you know, maybe disability, that sort of stuff. Somebody who comes to the table at a disadvantage. We're considering having a pilot program to explore what could we do to actually get on the front foot and help them. But I guess the difference would be that wouldn't be the responsibility of their mentor. That would be becoming a RACI initiative per se. On that particular topic, does anybody have any thoughts, pro or con, to the idea of a very limited advocacy pilot? You know, people, we should be, you know, feel free to drop stuff in the chat, by the way, if you don't feel like speaking. But, you know, just on the issue of an advocacy pilot, problems that you foresee with it, groups that we should be focusing on. I mean, as example, it's quite possible that we will see an influx of Afghan refugees in the next 12 months. And that might be an area that we could focus on to some extent.
One thing, Dave, that I don't know if you've done this, but it might be useful to reach out to our very own RIDIC, which is our RACI Inclusion and Diversity Committee. They might be able to give you some guidance as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be, I think, a worthwhile thing to
Sure.
to do. Sorry, that's not a solution or problem, but it's an idea.
You know, I mean, Christina, I saw your lips moving, but you were muted. Were you talking to us or to someone in the background?
No, sorry, my partner's just getting the cat's dinner and my dinner sorted. So.
No worries, not at all.
Sorry.
I just didn't want to not hear what you had to say. So, okay, so we'll put that back on the shelf for a minute and just go back to, you know, what we could be talking about. As I say, I think Kim has walked a really good line. Now, Richard, I know that you had a great relationship with your mentee. Do you want to talk at all about that?
Well, no, I mean, it's been a bit of a problem with COVID that we were meeting regularly, but then that stopped, and that really meant that was a bit of a time where we weren't in contact as much as perhaps I'd like. I think that my mentee was feeling initially that the course, he's doing a master's degree, that he wasn't really being able to do as much as he wanted to do, and he wasn't sure whether he was doing what the supervisor expected of him. So I suggested that he really should get with the supervisor and go and have a heart to heart with him. And his supervisor appears quite happy with what he's doing, although of course with the COVID you haven't really been able to do much. He's done a bit of coursework, and I think he felt that he didn't do quite as well in that as he would have liked, but I think he got through, so that's the thing. The impression I have is that he's got another 12 months or so before he finishes his course, so he's not actually looking terribly, what can I say? Actively, that's a good word, actively, at jobs. I've suggested a few people he should talk to. But of course, again, talking over a cup of coffee is pretty well out of the question at the moment in Victoria. And although we're getting more and more people vaccinated, we've had 1,438, I think, new cases of COVID today. So whether the government will go along and say we will lift all the restrictions when everybody is vaccinated, when you have that level of new infections, who knows? So I think we're probably... We're sort of motoring along, but possibly not as well as we would have been had we been able to be not be impacted by COVID.
Look,
I guess that's the same for everybody, I think. So yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely true. This last 2 years of mentoring, where there just haven't been face-to-face events, it's completely changed both the way that we mentor and the amount that we mentor, because so much of what we did was getting our mentees to events and helping them practice shaking hands and making new contacts, which we've been completely unable to do. So that's, I've certainly felt hamstrung. But even, over the 8 years, what I've found is that every mentee and their needs and the way that we interact has been completely different every single year. I've done it, I've had more than 10 mentees now, because sometimes I double up in a year. And everyone has been different. Now, my mentee this year basically doesn't need me. He's done all the lessons, he's paid attention, he's done the work, and he's actively out there networking for himself. And we have these check-ins where it's great to chat, love to chat with him, but in terms of what can I tangibly do to help, he's already hitting all of his marks. So, I feel a little bit useless for my mentee this year, I've got to say. Andrew, you're nodding. I mean, you've been one of our longest standing mentors.
I had a very similar situation. My mentee this year has actually got a job already and is working in Canberra. And so all of my fallbacks, let's check your LinkedIn profile, let's go through your CVs, let's do job applications, didn't have them. So it's been more of a, very different role this year, more of a, bouncing ideas off, what would you do in this situation? This happened to me at work. How would you have handled that? That sort of different advice, which is, it's worked. It's worked well, I think, but it's been challenging. Certainly not, cut and paste from last year.
Yeah, and one of the exercises I did with him, with my mentee, given that this was the situation, I said, well, why don't we practice developing your library of good star stories, given that you're already working on it, build your library of good star stories, because if you've got an arsenal of 4 or 5 of those, they're going to carry you through the next 5 years of interviews. So that's one of the things that I've really been practicing with him, is star stories, a little bit of interview technique and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, a lot of my work with my mentee has just been checking in with him and saying, who are you networking with? How many connections are you making? How can we make sure that it's targeted and that sort of stuff. Keely, you've got your hand up. Sorry, I didn't see that till just now.
No, that's all right. I have a very similar situation to Andrew. So my mentee had already, gotten a graduate opportunity. It's a fabulous opportunity, and so she's working full time. But I'm just kind of curious, Andrew, when you catch up with your mentee, do you come prepared with something to discuss, or how do you manage that? Because I feel guilty when we catch up because I don't really have any value adds at the moment. Because, like you, it would have always been, giving advice on career guidance and everything else. But yeah, what are you doing in those situations, or maybe anybody else that's in a similar situation?
Yeah, it's pretty open-ended. I mean, I do take notes from meetings, and before I go into this month's meeting, I'll look back over the notes and I'll have a list of questions for Raphael. Hey, how did that situation go? What happened with such and such? Did you catch up with that person I suggested you meet with? But then it sort of goes quiet, and I'm there's no plan. It's just so how's work, how's life, and stuff like that, and it sort of goes off on that sort of a tangent.
But in a sense, I'm kind of not too bothered. I'd much rather feel that we've covered the bases and the person is on their feet than this person is going to continue to struggle because they haven't engaged or because we haven't found the right connection with them.
It's been difficult. I mean, he's in Canberra and got a job, and he's got COVID. So we actually did manage to meet once in the year, but I don't have a massive network in Canberra. And I can tell you he's met everyone that I know in Canberra now.
Yeah, well, nobody has a massive network in Canberra. I think people who live in Canberra don't have a massive network in Canberra.
But they are very vaccinated, which is good.
Yeah, he'd be outstanding drinking beers well before we will.
Yeah. David, I think you're our only ACT mentor, aren't you?
That's right. Andrew, I would like to know your mentee. I'm in Canberra, so it might be good to connect.
Yes, I'll introduce the two of you.
And this is particularly important in the time of lockdown or the COVID time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they will just break down the isolation, because in particular for her or for him, it's a new place. It can feel quite isolated. So I'm more than happy to just say hello, and
I'll test you up afterwards and introduce you. Yeah, that would be good actually. I think he's moved from Sydney, from Macquarie Uni to Canberra, and I think he's with a cohort of quite young people, so there's a bit of socializing there, but I think it's all sort of within work, and he's looking for sort of other connections. So I'll introduce you, David.
Yep. So he work in the industry or with the government?
Government.
Oh, yeah.
There's also, David, I hope you already know the two mentees from last year, which is Tristan and Pina.
Oh.
Tristan, I forget his last name, and Pina Lutzi. They're both based in Canberra. They're mentees from last year, and they're very active supporters of the program. So it might be good to introduce.
Pina, I know Pina.
Pina and her husband Tristan. So Tristan was a chemist. Pina was a biologist, I think.
Yeah.
And they both moved here from Germany last year, and we did a lot of work to try and help them settle in Australia, get jobs, and all that sort of stuff. So
I also want to share. Oh, I think someone hands
Newman,
up.
Tristan Newman, that's his last name. Sorry.
No, Christine.
Carry on.
You hands up. I let you first. Oh.
No, it's just I had a little brain explosion when I remembered his last name. So you just carry on there, David.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to share, the experience with my mentee. And it might be interesting to answer that the question that, how to add value to the mentee, and also how to do something out of the routine, because every monthly, you feel that the routine not much to add on, and you feel better about that. And one way is if the mentee have something unusual or something that new to do. For example, in my mentee is she want to apply a very prestigious international scholarship and to have experience or travel and work experience in the USA. And that's fantastic as a part of his PhD. So that's really, really is a big job too to apply for it, and very competitive. So there's a lot of effort to put it in. And as a mentor, and I can definitely help to support that process. And that process lasts also quite a few weeks. And eventually we made a very good submission in. And we will see in October whether the good news coming up.
Outstanding.
And yeah.
Is that an Endeavour scholarship, David?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, because I helped somebody and he's still there, and it's fantastic. It's such a thrill to help.
Yeah. So it is very well. Everybody knows Fulbright, the
very prestigious
foundation. Yeah.
Now, there's a key point here too, that for any of us who, like, I know nothing about an Endeavour scholarship, but the point is, if there's something that I don't know about, remember that we have 80 other mentors in the program. We can always refer our mentor to our mentee to another mentor who has expertise that we don't. One of our mentees recently was applying for a government position and sent me their resume, and I said, well, there's much better people than me to review a resume for a government position, an application for a government position. And so I went to a couple of our government mentors and asked them to give feedback rather than me.
I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to need to leave because I've been double booked, but
No
it's
worries,
been
no worries.
nice.
Yeah, no,
and
thanks
I'll
very
look
much.
back at the recording. Thank you.
Yeah, so well done, David. I think that's absolutely excellent. I mean,
yeah. Also, well, he asked me as a referee as well, and because my experience or my time spent with him over, these 7-8 months, I'm able to also write a quite decent referee later to support it. Yeah.
Curiously, no mentee has ever asked me for a reference.
Oh, right. Well, you need to broadcast it. Say, look.
Never even occurred to me, but no, nobody's ever asked me for that.
Referee later is very important. It's so important in job application.
Sure, I mean, sure. Keely will tell you just how important a good referee is.
Yeah.
Christina, we'll jump to you.
I think Marie wanted to talk.
Okay.
You don't mind?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, cool.
Your hands both went up pretty much at the same time, so I didn't spot which was first.
I just wanted to say that I had a similar experience. My mentee is extremely capable. It's been interesting because he was doing his honours and didn't know whether he wanted to progress with a PhD or, go into industry and work. And that was good. It was interesting for me because I had the same kind of, dilemma at the end of my honours, whether I wanted to do a PhD or not. So it was interesting to be able to kind of talk to him through, the options and kind of tell him the things that I wish people told me before I did a PhD and, kind of what it's really like and what academia is really like as well. But yeah, he just, every time I talk to him, it's like, how are you going? What's happening? He started his PhD now. He finished his honours in July or June this year, and then he went straight on to do his PhD. So he started now. He got himself a scholarship, got himself slightly incredible honours score of 93%.
Wow.
I've never seen that. But you know what? He deserves it. And yeah, he's really doing a great job of setting himself up. He, when I talk to him and he'll say, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And what do you think of this? And I would say, well, this is my experience in this research, and you should go and talk to your supervisors about this and maybe go and talk to some other people. But, this is what I would do. Not, prescriptive. You don't have to go do this, but this is, my experience and what I would do, knowing what I know now.
Yeah. It's always reasonable to say, this is the choice I would make.
Yeah.
I always bracket it with, let's check what other people would say.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I don't know your situation as well as you do. So, I can say this is what I would do, but that may not be appropriate.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he decided, like I said, to do his PhD. We meet fortnightly.
Really?
and we have like a half an hour chat. And I thought that was really valuable, particularly for him towards the end of his honours. I think it's really valuable for a research student to have someone who they talk to who is not their supervisor, because I care about his career, his supervisors care about his research, and they are entwined, but they're not the same thing. So his supervisors were kind of pushing him to go in the lab and do more lab work. And I was like, no, you need to write your thesis. Tell them to bugger off, and you need to finish writing your thesis. And I talked to him the next week, and he was like, oh, I want to finish these experiments and finish this. And, you know, and then I've started getting into my thesis. And then the next 2 weeks, and I kind of said to him, no, you really need to, like, you've got like 8 weeks left, and you need to finish your thesis in 6 so that you can edit it for 2 weeks. And the next week he came back and he was like, yeah, you're right, I've started writing, and oh my God, I need to get this done. It's like, yeah, you do. And don't kind of not ignore what your supervisors say, but also your supervisors have different priorities to what I'm telling you.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, good advice.
Yeah. So it's I've really enjoyed it. This is my first year as a mentor, and I think it's been really valuable. I haven't met my mentee in person because I'm in Victoria and he's in Queensland.
Yeah, I will note 20% of our mentee-mentor partnerships this year are remote. So
yeah, I didn't mind that. I think in the beginning it was slightly more awkward than maybe meeting someone in person. But I did find it helpful that there was kind of those initial talking points and kind of program, you know, do this. But yeah, then after that, we basically just kind of talk about what he needs to talk about and what he's been up to. And if I see opportunities as well, I tend to like send him an email and be like, hey, there's this thing, are you interested?
Absolutely.
But yeah. So that's
the other thing I would be saying to a mentee like that at this point is, okay, we might be finishing up mentoring in November, but we still want to have a relationship with you. We RACI, you individually want to have a relationship with them long term. We want them to keep coming to RACI Careers events. We want them to come to physical networking events when they start again. You know, mentoring, formally or informally, can be something that will support them through the first 5 or 10 years of their career if they choose to take advantage of it. So, you know, I think it's worth reminding them that it doesn't end shortly.
Yeah, definitely. No, I was wondering about the kind of formal end of the program, and I was like, I mean, I'm he's in biology, he does jellyfish stuff. And cool. I'm to simplify, and I'm a physical chemist, I do hydrogen stuff. So most of the time when he's telling me things, I'm like, I can't help you with that science, like I have no idea. But it's so fascinating just listening to what he's doing and seeing what he's doing and watching his career develop. I was like, I don't want to stop meeting with him. Like, we probably won't meet as often, especially once his PhD gets going. Like, he won't need that much guidance regularly. Like, he'll need scientific guidance more than anything. But yeah, I was like, oh no, I plan to keep in touch, and yeah, I'll make sure he keeps in touch.
Yeah, and I still, I mean, COVID excluded, I still get together occasionally for lunch with, you know, my first couple of mentees from the, you know, 7-8 years ago. So, you know, and follow them through their career and such. Now, Mari, you've got your hands up.
Okay. So I have my experience with my mentee is she's already in the workplace. She's had a job right from the get-go, so she's in her first year out of uni. She's not in Sydney, she's in Victoria. So the role that I've played has been different to when I've been mentoring other people in the past that have been in that final year. Really, it's about helping her to understand that she's empowered for her own career. And so some of the things that I've been working on with her is goal setting. And I give her little bits of homework, if you like, things to think of, and then the next time we get together, we chat about that. At the moment, she's going through sort of, she had a really interesting thing happen in that, so the place that she works at, she spent, a little bit of time face to face when she first got the job, and then of course people plunged into lockdown. Then she was rotated out of the area that she was working in into a new area, and she's never actually been in the same place as the people she's working with right now in the same organisation. So that's been interesting for her. Not the easiest way to get introduced to a new bunch of colleagues at all. The other thing that's been happening is it's performance review time around now for her business where she works. So I've been helping her with that because she's never had anything like that before, and it's easy to get into the trap of not being assertive or advocating for yourself and thinking your boss is going to give you this information and that'll be that. It's actually a dialogue. So I've been supporting her with how to do that, which has been really good to do. I think, as you were saying, Dave, about the relationships that go beyond the mentoring period, and I think that that's something that I'll have with her, just, touching base every once in a while. Admittedly, because of our work calendars and so on, we've had ad hoc type meetings, if you like, once every month or two, and that seems to work for both of us. But yeah, that piece around helping someone set goals, because they've not really had to do it in that professional sense in the past. When you set a goal and you're at uni and it's just, I'm going to pass this unit and I'm going to get a distinction or whatever it might be, that goal is all well and good, but it's not really translatable to a goal in the workplace about, I want to develop this skill, or I want to be in this position or this industry within 5 years, or whatever it might be. So that's been a really good thing to do.
Absolutely. Excellent. Now, we've got a couple of people who haven't spoken.
Sorry, can I ask?
Yeah,
can I just ask Marie, the homework that you've set and for your mentee to walk away with, are you able to share some examples? Because that's the sort of thing that I would be really curious to know what others are doing.
Yeah, so I got her to think about, so the goal setting thing was, what would be relatively easy in terms of things to do, but it's a tough thing to think about, where do you want to be in 5 and 10 years' time, and to understand that if you put yourself in that goal, then you've got to find the way to get there. So what does that mean? So for my mentee, one of the things that she worked out was she needed to make herself stand out as being different to the rest, if you like. And for her, volunteering was actually one of those things she identified. So out of that came, there was in National Science Week, there was a ENSTO hackathon for students, school students. And she said, so what can I do in terms of volunteering? I said, well, RACI is a really good place to volunteer, but what about some of these other things? Because she was looking to volunteer in terms of her science knowledge as well. So she got involved in that. She found that really, really rewarding. And I think that that's shown her another dimension of professional development, if you like.
Excellent. And I'll add to that because I also set homework. So examples of homework I've done this year have been develop 2 new star stories, and we'll talk about them next month. Have coffee, whether that's a meeting or whatever, with 3 new people this month. Most of my stuff has been networking oriented because we can't network face to face. So I also got my mentee I encouraged him very strongly, but he took the bit between the teeth and ran with it to write and contribute, either to LinkedIn or to the careers blog at RACI or whatever. So he's posted 4 or 5 times to LinkedIn with stuff emerging out of the careers program. But it's all about raising his profile, practicing that communication, practicing that thought leadership. So those are a few examples of what I've done, Keely. Now, Sylvia, Shane, Anna, Nadia, we haven't heard from any of you. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't mind going, having a chat. So I think I'd mentioned to Dave on email recently that I've had a little bit of a challenging year with my mentee. Very lovely local girl, and we really enjoy our face-to-face catch-ups, which we try to do probably every 6 to 8 weeks. Very lucky here in Perth that we can see each other face-to-face mostly. But like some of you have mentioned, most of the conversations are just sort of, a general sort of discussion. She's a PhD student in her first year. I, didn't complete a PhD, so there are some things that I can't really, sort of understand, not related to the coursework or anything else like that, but just sort of how she's feeling, and she's very stressed. She had to do some presentations recently, and she was very, very nervous about that. So I guess, all that I try to do is just to be there for her and listen to all of her concerns. And we just try and come up with something different to do every month. So, we've gone for just walks around the uni, with some takeaway coffees. We've had lunch together. We've met in the lab. I happen to know some of her supervisors quite well, so I'm always reassuring her that, look, if there's ever anything that you're not sure about, just go and talk to them. That's what they're there for. But yeah, I guess, we're sort of coming up to the end of the year, and I also feel that I haven't really, made too much of a difference to her. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but, she's from a very, tight-knit, close family sort of situation. So, I'm sure she's getting a lot of support anyway, and I just kind of feel like I haven't really done too much.
Is she becoming an active job seeker?
No. So that's also the other thing. She, kind of doesn't really want to work, doesn't really need to work. So she's
cool.
Very, yeah, I know. I mean, how lucky is that? We've all had to work some point. She's not quite at that level, I think, where she's being offered any, sort of sessional, tutoring or anything like that either. I think she's very happy to just get up, go to uni for the day, go home. She lives right near there. So I guess all I've sort of said to her, without offering any advice at all, is basically, look, you just do what you're happy to do. You just go in, do your lab work, speak to your peers, and perhaps just, keep up your hobbies. You need a bit of downtime. Try not to get too sort of down and out and worried with things. And if you do feel that way, pick up the phone to me. I'm always here, or I'm always around campus, or, just please go speak to your supervisors as well. So yeah, that's all I've really been able to do for her. Whereas last year with my mentee, very, very involved, helped her with all sorts of things. So I really like to get them along to some of the events that I go to, because I really think networking is hugely beneficial. Sort of that's what I do for a living. So anytime that there's a local event on, or I always let them know about it. Very happy to introduce them to people that I know as well. Because it can be pretty long, lonely days otherwise in the lab working on what it is that you're working on. So yeah, but that said, it's going well.
The support that she wants, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I kind of see myself maybe as an older cousin or sister or something. I don't know. She's one of 6 siblings. I mean, really incredible family, a lot of support for her. She's the youngest in her family. So she has a lot of very successful older siblings that are there for her no matter what she needs. So, I mean, that is great. She's very lucky. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm sort of running out of ideas. I think we'll just have one more catch up before the year ends. And I'll probably take her along to the combined biological sciences meeting. I think it's, really good for students. It's that time of the year where you can go have a look at someone else's poster or listen to them present their poster, that kind of thing.
Look, if she lives the life where she has the choice of what she does, then it might be worth pointing her in the direction of some of the opportunities in citizen science, in volunteer science, in writing, things that she might get fulfillment out of without having to earn a living from.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Certainly, what's the name of that project that has a whole lot of citizen science? Does anybody, they started with the Galaxy project and now it's all sorts of citizen science. I'll find it and I'll include it. I'll send an email. But there's a very famous project that started with stars, with star maps, but it has now extended to all sorts of different areas. The only thing is there's not a lot, because I've looked into citizen science, there's not a lot of citizen science in chemistry. There's quite a lot in ecology and things like that, but not so much in chemistry. But depending on what your mentee is interested in, that may or may not be interested. Certainly my wife.
Yeah, she's chemistry PhD,
Yeah, my wife volunteers at the Australian Museum as a completely non-technical person. And what she is doing, I mean, I shouldn't say she's not doing it at the moment because the museum's closed, but for the last 7 years, she's been going in once a week, photographing and cataloguing specimens from the library collection. And she and her colleagues have now catalogued over 5 million specimens of insects, journals, cultural artifacts, all sorts of stuff in the Australian Museum. And now everything is photographed, catalogued, recorded, so that researchers from around the world can access it. It's called the Digivol project. And she loves it.
Okay. I just have sort of one more idea or thing I wanted to say. I just remembered right now. I don't know how, Dave, you feel about this or others, if you have some, questions about it. But my other idea I had for her, for Louisa, is, again, just to keep up the interest and the sort of the catching up and all of that. She also mentioned that she really likes being around, younger kids. I think she just, from a big family, loves kids. So I actually run a science club at our little local primary school here. And I'm also involved with the academic extension boys at my son's boys' college. So I thought, you know what, I think maybe I could just get her involved with that, just to come along and just do one session and just to chat to these really young sort of year 5 to year 10s, just about, how she felt going through school and what sparked her interest in science or just STEM in general. I don't know sort of what the process is for getting an outsider onto the school grounds, but I think it's just a matter of signing in and, all of that.
Well, in addition, CSIRO also runs a national program of that sort of stuff. That
is that the scientists in schools?
I think
is that still going?
Schools, something like
that was really good. Yeah.
And don't forget about the RACI titration stakes and the crystal growing competitions. That's all aimed at high school students, and I'm sure they would love volunteers for those as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do that at my son's school, CBC, but for the year sort of 10, 11, 12s, I do feed a lot of this sort of information through to the teachers down there. But yeah, it was sort of more for her just to kind of give us something else to think about. So
yeah, absolutely. Now I'm cognizant of the passage of time.
Yes, I actually.
No, sorry, I'm not trying to shut you down.
No, not at all. But I've got 300 kids in the background.
Jane, Anna, did you have anything you wanted to say before I move on?
I will. Yeah. So I guess I also don't have experience with PhD, so I was a bit apprehensive how I would be able to connect. But our first session, we actually looked at what was his interests, where did he see himself going into academia, what did he really enjoy, and we've actually met up face to face at try and get meet up once a month, and it tends to go for a couple of hours because by the time we finish talking.
Great.
So yeah, we spent a lot of time working out what his actual interests were, and then going, well, you shouldn't even, these are the jobs you don't even want to even bother looking at. This is sort of the direction I think you'll find jobs that might interest you. So over time, we sort of did that, worked on updating his CV. And then end of July, we started looking at job agencies. So all the recruitment agencies as another form, not just looking at Seek, but another way of where jobs get advertised. So I found a list of a heap of different agencies in Melbourne and left him sort of to go and have a look at what sort of jobs they've got on there. So he's sort of come back. We had a chat a couple of days ago and he's going, this is fantastic. I've never seen jobs like this advertised. There's so many that interest me. And he's rung a couple of the agencies now and had big, long chats about what he needs to do. So he's due to finish his PhD because of all the lockdowns. He's got an extra 3 months or 4 months into next year. So he's just got a bit of extra time before he really needs to be doing stuff. But we've still got I've given him the target that he should really be applying for jobs by about November, even with that extra time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's what the plan is for him.
Yeah. Excellent, Anna. Excellent. I will also note that not so much with this mentee, but with past mentees, what we've sometimes talked about has been my career, my successes, and particularly my failures and what I've learned from those failures. And those have often provoked some really interesting discussions that have led the mentee to investigate avenues that are relevant to their career. Particularly, and I will say, talking about my failures, the times I've really messed up along the way has often said, "Oh, I wonder how that applies to me." Basically, is the question that is often. It hasn't happened so much this year, but certainly in past years, that's been quite prominent.
Well, it did kind of result in me changing jobs partway through the year.
There you go. Okay, now we're running towards the end of what we had budgeted. So I just want to talk a little bit about, I want to be open to criticism, right? There's lots of things that we could do better. The obvious one in 2021 has been organising events further ahead in time, not being quite so last minute. And I will, on behalf of the team, I will put a great big mea culpa. It's me who's been the most chaotic in the management team. I'm very, very ably supported by Afsha, by Yvonne and Pam, and they all work their hardest, but I've been a little bit chaotic. So yeah, I realise that when we have events, we need to try and get them organised better ahead of time. The other thing, of course, has been COVID related, that we just haven't been able to have the face-to-face events that we want to have this year. So be it. That will improve with time. Things that we are talking about doing in 2022, we're looking at decreasing. So we've run Careers Thursday, and this year almost every Thursday we have run an event on a Thursday night. It has been brutal to organise, and by the end of the year we'll have run nearly 60 careers events over the course of the year. Next year, we're looking at ramping that down. We'll still keep the ones that I think are really important, things like careers, as camaraderie, of which Richard, as example, has been a really big supporter. I think you've come to every single camaraderie this year. And I certainly do encourage our mentors to come to camaraderie when you can. If you can come to 3 in a year, that means that we will have enough mentors to really network with our young people. So we'll maintain camaraderie, we'll maintain some of the webinar stuff, but we'll do it less often, fortnightly or less. And we won't be so brutal as to say it has to be every Thursday night. What we're talking about replacing it with is resources and training. And I wanted to get your thoughts. We were wondering, so what I'm thinking of is little tiny training videos, courses, things like, Sylvia, you're Sartoris, you're probably quite expert at something like NMR, right? Okay. Pick a technique that you're good at.
We're pretty famous for balances, so I'd have to say lab weighing.
Right, balances,
for
fine,
example.
right, for example, right? Somebody else might be expert at pH meters, somebody might be expert at NMR, but just creating little half-hour training videos that go through, and we actually created a list, didn't we, Yvonne, that sort of talked about starting with, just the broad brush of how this technique works. Here's the instrument in operation. If you pull it apart, this is how you maintain it. So just some very simple stuff. And I thought that we could potentially go out to our mentoring cohort and say, what are you expert at? Would you be willing to produce a short video about that thing which you are expert at? It doesn't have to be long, but we just thought that could be really useful to our mentees, particularly in the post-COVID era, where a lot of our mentees, being mostly final year students, won't have been in the lab, won't have had the opportunity to get access to these techniques, right? Andrew, as example, you might talk a little bit about what is a patent? How do you read a patent? Something like that, if you were to do it. I'm not putting pressure on you. Nobody will be put, I won't say to everybody you have to do, I'm just saying I'll be looking for volunteers. An associated idea, we might talk about micro-credentialing, doing some sort of package of courses, and then they can earn a badge that they can put on LinkedIn and say, I've done an instrument course, or I've done a technical writing course, or I've done, simply, I've participated in the mentoring program. I've participated enough. So for instance, this year, any mentee who has earned 10 points, they've met with their mentor, they've attended an event, they've watched a webinar, etc., will get a badge that they can put on LinkedIn to say, I was a mentee in the mentoring program, right? So that's one of the things that we're thinking about, trying to produce some guidance materials so that we don't have to do an event every week. And I want to talk to the podcast people about maybe whether we can get involved in the podcast in some way. Another idea is that pilot program for the disadvantaged, a pilot advocacy program for the disadvantaged. What I'm thinking of is 2, 3, 4 people in the year, not big, just a little trial. I will say Kim has left us, but her mentee, for instance, the other day, I actually picked up the phone to an employer that I knew she was applying to, and I said, you know me, you trust me as the mentor, as the leader in the mentoring program. I am recommending this candidate to you. She's good, which goes one step beyond into advocacy, but I'll do it for some, I'll do it for active mentees, basically, ones that I know are here and learning lessons. But throw it open to the floor. Do you guys have any other ideas that we should be considering? What have we failed at this year? What can we do better next year? And our hand just went up, but I don't see whose hand. Oh, there it is, Keely.
Me. I think that everything that you've been doing is incredible, and I don't even know how you manage it all, if I'm honest, Dave. So well done. It's simply extraordinary.
Kudos to the team.
Yes, but I guess one thing that I think could be an addition, and I don't think it's something that needs to be ready for the next year's launch, but maybe over time, if there was some, and not something that you have to create, but maybe all of us mentors can provide some of our own resources that we may have developed ourselves for our sessions with our mentees. It would be really good if there was like a folder that we could all access and grab a resource if we had nothing that we had to talk about for an upcoming, meeting. I just think it would be really helpful, but I think it's going to be a long time coming to get all of the resource materials together. But I mean, if we all put in one thing that could be added to it, that would make it a lot easier and just gives us something to go by.
Well, very good idea. Do note that we do already have a useful links page that we put in careers. It has links to lots of articles, educational articles. It has links to every single one of the major scientific recruitment consultancies. Purcell Kelly is there.
Number one, I hope.
I'm honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's got links to the major job sites. It's got links to just basically whatever I have seen and thought, oh, that's useful. So it's a little bit like a magpie collecting bottle caps or something. It's not thorough or comprehensive, but it certainly does exist. And I guess that's kind of what I'm looking to expand next year, is to make that more formal, more thorough, more comprehensive, a real resource database that we can come to. And that's a really good idea, Keely, that I can't believe I didn't think of, to actually ask, What do you already have out there? The only problem is, of course, I know that, you know, for instance, I've got friends at University of New South Wales Careers, and they have some really good resources, but they only share them with Uni New South Wales students, so they won't give them me.
I think
Boarding. Sorry, I have to go.
Yeah.
If I think of anything, I will let you know. And yeah, thanks everyone. Really nice to see everyone.
Well, before you
tonight.
go, I want to thank each and every one of you. I hope you realize, and I hope you've heard the stories tonight, the work that you do, volunteering your time, makes a tangible difference to young lives. And we so many times get people come back to us and say, because of this program, because of your help, I got my job. You know, so just remember what you are doing good in the world. And you should all pat yourselves on the back. So thank you very much, Christina, for participating.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Sylvia, Lab Weighing Academy. Awesome. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Me on the video though, it's our applications lady over in Sydney. She's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Look,
Just
one of the
one
things
quick.
Sorry, I was going to say.
I've just remembered one little last thing, and I'll.
Oops. You've muted, Sylvia.
I'm on another committee which is new over here called Life Sciences WA, and I was recently thinking, you know, it would be great, you know, if it was okay for that committee to kind of shadow a little bit of the events that you hold, because I just think you do so much. And I was saying to them, oh, you know, the RACI, I've been on and off it for many, many years, and it's a really long-standing association. Always have great ideas, great events and everything else like that. And it's really good just to piggyback off, you know, another sort of association that's tried and tested. And yeah,
we are completely eager to collaborate with anyone who is willing to collaborate with us. So we already have a good relationship with the AIFST, the Food Science and Technology, and with CTAC. So CTAC, the environmental technology, they paid for 7 of their members to join our mentoring program this year.
Oh, great.
Right? Because it was cheaper for them to do it through us than to try and set up their own program. So yeah, we will happily share events, resources, everything. You know, it's a classic case of 1 + 1 = 3, right?
Yeah.
And particularly remembering that we have 2 programs going. We've got the mentoring program, which is one-on-one, but we've got the careers development program, which is free resources, free webinars, free events, all that sort of stuff. And we're aiming to reach as many people as we can. At the moment, we reach about 1,500 young people a year through the CDP. We aim to grow that to 10,000 within 3 years. And the only way that can happen is if we're getting the message out there. There are free resources. Come and use them. Okay, great. I look after student engagement at Life Sciences WA, so I'll definitely bring that up. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, there's an initiative at RACI that's called the University Ambassadors Program that they're ramping up again next year. It existed a few years ago. It fizzled, but they're putting a lot more effort into it this time, and we're hoping to be very much more successful. And as part of that University Ambassadors Program, we hope to push the careers program into every university that teaches a science course in Australia, which I believe is about 27 institutions. So yeah. There's also a lovely industry ambassador program as well, Dave. Is there? I was unaware of this. Such is the way that RACI communication channels work. Anyway, I'll leave that. I'll remind you, for those of you who don't know, Murray is actually a board member. For a little while longer, not too much longer. So she knows what's happening, you know, at the strategic level at the top. Yeah, but what that is so we, you know, Dave Springer has got a whole bunch of commercial laboratories to, I guess, identify some, and often young people in their beginning of their careers, to be mentors and ambassadors as well for RACI. So when I say mentors, I mean getting people to come along and join in and all those sorts of things. Yeah. So that's in the sort of commercial industry type sector where that's happening. But that is another opportunity for the mentoring program itself
one of the things I was going to say was, well, clearly we've got a mixture of people, some who are still at university and haven't secured a job, and others that are just starting their careers, early career chemists. And that's where those links could be useful, I think, for the mentoring program as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's worth noting that we have 83 mentee-mentor pairs this year. Hey there. We're loosely assuming that the number next year will be 120. So, you know, we're just trying to get the word out there, and then we'll have to recruit some more mentors to match. But you know, if you look at our last 3 years, it was 22, 43, 83 in the last 3 years of the mentoring program. So we're thinking 120, and so it's basically doubled every year. I hope we're being reasonable to assume that it's not going to double again next year. So I will also just briefly mention my long-term goal, and we're not nearly there yet, is to have the program generating either enough surplus cash or enough sponsorship that we can actually pay a person who would be the equivalent of Keely as a reverse recruitment consultant, taking our members and finding them jobs, taking our young members and finding them jobs. And they would be paid by RACI from the surplus of the careers program to find our young members jobs. We're nowhere near at that point yet. We at least have reached the point where the careers program is self-funding, albeit that a bit of sponsorship would always be, a bit more sponsorship would always be really helpful. But yeah, so that's my long-term goal, and until I have reached that, I will never feel that I have achieved what I wanted to in the careers sector for RACI. So.
Dave, we'll do it for free. You just have to send us through the candidates.
Well, that's excellent. I had
you don't
no
have
knowledge.
to pay me anything. We'll just
Really?
get that off of the company. So don't worry. Send them my way.
Okay,
we're in a candidate short market.
Let's be very clear on this. There are a range of candidates, and again, they're mostly disadvantaged candidates who don't look as good on paper, and they're going to be a difficult sell for someone like a recruitment consultant. But they're people who would be so benefited by getting that job and you know, that level of advocacy. My basic viewpoint is this: there are lots of government services that will help someone find a job if they've been unemployed for 6 months, but 6 months of unemployment is soul destroying. And therefore, what I want to do is I want to take those people and intervene in their job search before they've been unemployed for 6 months. That's my vision one day. Yvonne, you've got your hand up.
Well, no, I'm probably about 2 steps behind when you talked about building up resources.
Yeah, resources.
I think I also suggested to you one day in the life of, say, a business manager who developed from application, a chemist in the lab for industry. I think that'll be good, because my experience is that mentees they just can't see out. They just can't see the future. You know, they just can't imagine the different roles that they can have in the future. It's always just, they've got to first take that big step to find a job, and then from that job, they're just wondering what is it, you know, and what's next. So if they can see that, if we can just show them the crystal ball, as close to a crystal ball as possible, I think it gives them more confidence.
Yeah. There is a project, Yvonne, I'm not sure if I've discussed it with you. We've been sort of had it on the drawing board for the last 2 years, and we loosely called it Do What You Love. But where we wanted to go to every single one of our 4,500 RACI members and get them to answer some basic questions. What do you do? What do you love about what you do? How did you get into it? That sort of stuff, which is the simple principle of what, you know, what's a day in your life, and prepare a career map so that young people can look and say, look at all the different places that chemists end up, look at all of the wonderful things, and they can, you know, we group all the commercial people together, all the industry people together, and then you go down, okay, industry, you got bio, you got pharma, you got whatever, and then they can drill down to the member level and see, look at all of the opportunities, go through it and find their inspiration.
Yeah.
I would say easily 50% of undergraduates approaching their graduation will say to me, I don't know what I want to do after I graduate. And to have a career map that they could refer to and find inspiration from would be amazing.
Yeah.
But we just haven't had the resources to do it yet.
Yeah. And then another thing too, when I think about core competencies, so, you know, we always start to think, oh, that's when I'm doing it in my job, when I'm hired by an employer. But while you're doing a PhD, while you're, you know, in a master's degree, honors, you're already utilizing those core competencies. And I think that needs to be expressed more to the mentees that, hey, you are already doing these core competencies. Self-empowerment, entrepreneur. Yep,
sorry. If we, as part of our resources, we developed some sort of resource which was a self-guided self-discovery, something that where it says, what are my skills?
Yeah.
And something that they can go through and think through, you know, a little bit like, you know, one of those self-help books, only on a very small scale, and so that they could think about what are my skills.
Yep.
That might be another useful resource we could add to the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Sounds good to me. Okay.
Dave, just on that, I'm obviously retired now, but when I used to be in the workforce, we used to do a lot of work experience for university students in particular. Part of that, I'll call it a semi-formal program. They had a workbook, and there was a whole series of skills that they would need to try and achieve during their stay with it. Most of the time it was at least 2 weeks, but we also ran back programs as well. And in that booklet would be a whole series of skills, including things like, you know, metrology, weighing, running a GC, running a HPLC, all these sorts of pieces of equipment, how to put it, quality control anyway. And over a period of time, there was sort of 3 levels of assessment where they've, you know, seen the task being done, they've done the task several times, and thirdly, they've been signed off by a supervisor or someone that's looking after them to say that they believe they're now competent in that skill set. And then at the end of their time, they're taking away a booklet, which they may not get through everything, depending on how long they've been there and what they've been exposed to. But then they're able to, in their CV, say, I did work experience or whatever at this company, and during that time, I became deemed to be competent at these various tasks and skills.
It's a very good idea, Shane.
For their CV. And I'm aware a few other companies did a similar thing along the industrial strip, but that was something that we felt at where I worked at New Farm, because prior to that, students would come along and they get a lot of experience, they felt great about it, they enjoyed their time and all the rest of it, but they didn't have anything like, if you like, a tangible scorecard that they could take away with them to understand what they actually did and what was valuable and relevant. So that's something I think in terms of brokering, and I'm thinking about, you were talking about some of these people that you believe it might be hard to place on paper. I think there's a huge amount of, and if you like, I work with organisations like Bridging the Gap and others with long-term unemployed people and or students that were in there, in some cases, anything from year 10 to 12, that were struggling, not academically at school, but socially at school. And we also took on board some of those guys for periods of time to try and provide, if you like, some awareness of where they might, a career might be for them. If that,
I could have used that.
Yeah. So, and that worked well for some of them, I'll admit. So, in terms of your harder to place categories, actually finding or brokering a work experience program, even if it's only for a couple of weeks with an organisation,
I completely agree.
I'd give them a leg up.
Yeah, I'd love to have a generalized work experience program, and maybe, you know, if this industry outreach stuff that Murray was talking about before is successful, you know, it might be something that we can grow over coming years, because I think it would be an outstanding outcome for our young members. I think this is the sort of stuff that we should be focusing on our members rather than the wider careers development program community. It should be our mentees and our members, but I completely agree, it would be great. Before I come to you, Keely, Shane, is there any chance at all that we could lay our hands on that old New Farm booklet?
I could probably chase up and yep. I was making some notes here.
Yeah, no worries. All right, well, while you're making notes, Keely?
I was just going to say a lot of companies are hesitant on work experience because of the insurances. And what some of the universities do is they cover off the insurances for the individuals. I don't know, that might be an area if there is extra money in the pot, as you talked about, maybe it would be better suited towards maybe internship programs so we can get people into, you know, some work experience and not have the insurances be a bit of a deterrent for companies.
Yeah, I mean, even just somebody who facilitates getting that paperwork sorted. Because I do know that most universities in New South Wales, I don't know about other states, but most universities who have a chemistry faculty do provide insurance for their students while they are students to get work experience. But the accessing that paperwork can be more easier or harder. I know Sydney University, it's just unbelievably bureaucratic and complicated to make that available. So, but yeah, look, all of these things, you know, internships, work experience, I think they're all fabulous ideas, and I see them all in our future as we grow our resources. So, you know, our biggest limitation at the moment is human resources. The mentoring committee between us put about 1,000 hours this year into running the careers development program. So,
okay.
Yeah,
I just want to pick up what you say about the micro credential. I think if maybe next year we can try it, I'm definitely a supporter for that. And that can help you too for the scheduling. You once mentioned the scheduling could be a challenging for the weekly and monthly activity. So the micro credential, you can just run as a project and you can plan for 10 sections or whatever over a period. And then both the mentee and well, not just the mentor can contribute, I think the mentee can contribute too. And they can also, it's like a group discussion in a way. And through that discussion, you learn the techniques, particularly the chemistry technique, which is relevant. For example, NMR. So I probably can, you know, want to get involved as well if you set up an NMR sort of
right.
micro credential, because it's quite complicated and so powerful. In my work and for identification of the small molecule is so important. So I definitely want to have some, you know, quite skills, but still I want to learn more in a way, and it would be good to learn and share from those that, you know, more experienced or even less experienced, but have a good example to share with everyone. And we now have quite a big mess of the, you know, mentor and mentees. So we can form a group in a way that definitely, I think that people are interested in it. And so if that can be organized, or we can try next year.
Yeah.
And also for me too, it's sort of break away from the routine, sort of one-to-one mentoring. And then you can form several mentor or mentees that have some interest in form a group, and then they have some sort of activity which you can organize by you or through the formal scheduling.
Very good idea,
anyway,
David.
Yeah.
Interest groups, all right? Sorry, my pen has just given out, but interest groups. I'm literally writing it down. That one doesn't work either.
I think also complementing the skills, another set of competencies are things like collaboration, team building, problem solving.
Oh, absolutely.
All those are really,
not
really
just hard
important.
skills, soft skills, absolutely.
So yeah, empathy, team. Yeah.
And I think we do a couple also on things like mental health, about, you know, balancing mental health and stuff like that. I think we talk about those sort of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Marie.
Just on that,
Sorry. Clearly everybody's got to leave. We've got to wrap up. Marie,
just on that, one of the projects that we're working on in RACI at the moment is some broader professional development activities and training in those spaces that you were just talking about. In fact, there's a need for those things throughout people's careers at different points. So it's not just an early career person or something like that, or undergrad. So it'd be great, you know, to be able to promote those things.
Yeah, I will say this, Marie. My plan was not to go off half-cocked. What I'm doing is I'm preparing a plan for the 2022 program that I was going to submit.
Yeah, I'm not talking about your plan. I'm just saying, though, that it might be that there's other things that we can leverage off in
absolutely. There's so much good stuff going on
to do anything. Yeah.
So,
if you what I would say is, if you would be so kind to push those sorts of things, that would be lovely.
So sometime in the very near future, I'm going to finalise a plan for, or at least draft a plan for 2022 that I intend to submit to Roger and the committee and things like that, to things like the WIC groups as well, and, you know, get everybody's feedback and opportunities for collaboration, so that we're not doing anything in isolation. You know, full communication has always been a bit of a problem for RACI. I think we're doing a lot better these days. So yeah, but I certainly didn't want to be a silo over here.
That's good.
So, all right. The last thing I will say is there will be a survey coming out to all of our mentors very soon, just asking you about your experience with the 21 program and asking whether you would still like to be a mentor in 2022. We don't assume it, and of course we understand that that everybody has their reasons for participating or withdrawing. So if anyone does need to withdraw, then we simply thank you for your service and very much appreciate what you have been able to contribute. So.
No worries.
Okie dokie.
Right. Sorry about earlier, guys. For whatever reason, Zoom kicked me off and I had to try and get back on again. That's why I disappeared.
All good. All good.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. So again, look, thank you, everybody. Your contribute. I'm so thankful to everybody. You make this program great. I can't believe that it started as me 8 years ago and suddenly it's this whole national thing that we're doing so much good. It's just wonderful. So, you know, because literally 8 years ago, it was 2 mentees and me. So, yeah. So this
great work, Dave.
Oh, no. Well, look, one of the things I love about the ideas for next year is that it will be a much more diverse offering, and it won't just be the tubby bald guy again and again. So,
just on that, Dave, when you started that off 8 years ago, if I can speak from WA's experience, both Curtin and UWA both ran an industry-linked mentoring program. I think UWA's was called Career Mentor Link, and I can't remember what the Curtin one was called, where they actively placed mentors, students with mentors. And some of my colleagues on the industrial strip, in fact, used to have several mentees, and we used to, as part of that program, they got 1 day's work experience in 10 different industries.
Cool.
So that they could have a broad brush of what was out there, and then from there they could decide, well, that was really fascinating. This is where I think my career might go, and that was quite beneficial.
Absolutely.
About 4 to 5 years ago, those programs started falling apart, and I just think the people in the universities that were the key contacts decided it was all too much, and no one else was willing to pick up the baton and run with it. So they end up falling in a bit of a heap, which was, anyway, it's the way it happened, which is a bit of a shame. But having said that, the RACI obviously program was coming along and gaining some momentum. So I think that has helped fill part of that void for some people.
Well, actually, the reason we were slow to come into WA is because I'd been advised by Ferdy that we didn't want to step on the toes of the university programs.
Well, at the time we were trying to get clarity from them what they were doing, because if they were going to run a program, then it made sense for the RACI to support what they were doing by, with our members. But we didn't want to duplicate things and, if you like, steal from their program.
Yeah.
But as I say, it got a bit frustrating probably for 2 years in a row that we were trying to do that, and it just seemed to all too hard, and that sort of fell over at the last minute each time.
Yeah.
So I must admit, I was very happy, if you like, that the RACI number one became more active in this space, and secondly, obviously, Ferdy and others were saying, well, why can't WA be involved? With Zoom and with other things, there's no reason why distance should be the precluder of anything.
And that's been the silver lining to COVID, is that it has really broken down a lot of those regional barriers.
Yep.
That I've just been so thrilled. I mean, Richard and I have become friends over the years, and and chances are we never would have met.
Yeah.
So.
No, look, I think it's great. I mean, we're very fortunate in WA that we actually are or have been able to hold quite a few face-to-face events, the camaraderies and other guest speakers and awards nights and things like this, and awards dinners have actually been taking place. And that's been obviously great, because it is nice to obviously meet face-to-face with people from time to time. But again, you're right. I think COVID has taught a lot of people that Zoom and or even a telephone call is better than no contact, and you don't have to get on a plane to interact with people every time. I mean, that's been one of the big things I think is companies have worked out now. They don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year flying people around the countryside to interact.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I will never again fly to Perth for a 1 hour meeting.
No.
Which I have done.
Yeah, I know. Well, I used to fly to Melbourne in the morning, have meetings all day, and fly home that night.
Yeah.
But
9
hours
I've done it for a day, but I went to Perth once, had a 1 hour meeting, and came back on the red eye. And thank God, what a waste of resources and money that could have been done via Zoom.
It is.
Well, no, I have to say that I once flew to Perth for a lunch. So that's probably capped that, I think. Flying to Perth in the morning, had lunch in the restaurant at Kings Park, and then came back again. Now, I would have to say that we were actually meeting an overseas visitor, and he didn't want to come to Melbourne because that wouldn't fit in with his schedule. So we had to go to Perth. But it's a bit extravagant. Not sure that we do that these days, but there you go.
I wonder what border interstate security would do.
It's
because I got asked, I had to do a quick business trip up to Hong Kong, and then it was an overnight one, and I got asked at our Australian Melbourne terminal immigration lots of questions.
Yes.
Lots and lots. Yeah.
But they let you back in the country, didn't they?
Yeah.
Drugs and all.
After I answered everything. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to wrap up. Reminder that next Thursday night is camaraderie for those who are able to make it. But I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank all of our mentors. But I also want to particularly thank Yvonne, Pam, and Afsha, because they have put in an enormous amount of hard work this year to do it. And Afsha, she sits quietly in the background, hasn't said a word tonight. But so much happens under my name that is actually Afsha.
It's Afsha.
So.
And Pam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and thank you, Dave, for leading the venture, the initiative.
Well,
fantastic job.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Well done, everyone.
Okay.
Well done.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
See
Thanks
you.
so much.
Catch you guys.
Bye.
Bye.